I called Julian Hill's office today. Julian Hill is a member of Parliament in the Labour Party, and I called it today to find out more about when Julian Hill said that he was going to, there's a parliamentary committee that is trying to stop the extradition of Julian Assange, and I was trying to find out if that had any teeth. And from what I gather from the reception person that I spoke to today, I don't think it has any teeth, because the government, the Morrison government, which is the coalition government, the Liberal/National Party government, has no intentions whatsoever of doing anything for Julian Assange. None whatsoever. And you could pretty much say that for the Labour Party. So if the Labour Party was in government at the moment in Australia, they would not really be doing anything either. I mean, they've been pretty much silent, except for this recent speech by Julian Hill, which apparently is the third one, I was told today when I spoke to his office. I haven't seen any until just recently, so that sort of indicates that the Murdoch media has probably been, sort of squashing those particular speeches. The amount of propaganda we get from the Murdoch media, and that 75% of the media is owned by Murdoch here in Australia, you don't really find out anything of really what's going on. But anyway, sounds like I thought it would be kind of hopeless, really. And there's been so little said anywhere. I mean, it's true that it's completely, we have a cowardly government, both sides, both major parties. They've just abandoned Julian Assange, who is an Australian citizen. They've just abandoned him completely. Which, even just on the level of being an Australian, to know that your government is quite happy to throw you to the wolves, an Australian citizen, even though his only crime, in quotes, was journalism. But basically that indicates that they're happy, if the US wants somebody, they're happy to just throw them to them, really. And yet at the same time, when it's convenient, like the two journalists that were in China just recently, who were having difficulties, Australian journalists, the Australian government jumped in there, because China is a target, and so you have to make a fuss about that. China is a US target, and Australia is just a vassal state of the United States. So if we're required to drum up, to emphasize their propaganda for their aims, imperialist aims, then we will do so. So when the government, Australian government, wants to jump in and assist journalists or somebody else, and there's a reason to, meaning to help the US with their propaganda about China, or to ramp up the war against China, then the Australian government, as the good little lackeys that they are, will jump in and do what is required. For a while now, since seeing how they've just left him there in Belmarsh prison, and they're not going to do anything even in that regard, the Australian government, it sort of was very clear to me by the incredible silence, the silence is deafening, that they've absolutely committed to, and had done so some time ago, committed to the US to just basically leave him to them, to leave him to their own devices, basically. And the UK government appears to be the same way. But I don't think it would have made any difference if the Australian Labor Party had been in power at this time. And the Green Party is really, there are about 4 different Greens Party members who have been doing stuff in recent times, but where were they in the last 9 years while this has been going on? Where were all these people? It's been going on now for 9 years. So, and you have to wonder really whether they're just, sometimes I wonder whether all these different politicians are just doing it because they feel like they can say, well, I tried, this is at the end though. And, I could believe it more if I felt like this had been going on, for years, but it hasn't. And the Green Party has been as bad as the Labor Party in their silence, And of course, you wouldn't expect anything better from the coalition, which is just an authoritarian wannabe government. Scott Morrison is so eager to please the United States, more so than he would just do anything, really. He's going along with this, the war on China, this coming war on China. He's just happily going along with that. Complete idiot. Like I've said before, I know I've said this a few times now, but I mean, it's just true. If you just check out online and look at the 14 defining characteristics of fascism, the United States has every single one of them in place right now, and it's really just a matter of blossoming that into full-on fascism. And, you know, that's going to happen if Donald Trump gets into office, which it looks like he probably will, despite his terrible management of the COVID pandemic. It looks like he's going to get back in again, and I don't know what. I think it's going to be an absolute frightening mess if that's the case. And please note that isn't an endorsement of the dreadful warmongering corporate Democratic Party. I'm just saying that Donald Trump is a neo-fascist, and all those 14 defining characteristics of fascism are all in place and have been for some time. It's not something that's just happened because Donald Trump is in office. This has been developing over many decades, many decades, and it's sort of really escalated since the 9/11 excuse for a war on terror, in quotes. But just back to Julian Hill, I had some glimmer of hope that, you know, there might be some way to block his extradition, like Julian Hill, the Member of Parliament for the Labour Party, said he was going to try and do with these other members from across party lines. There's more than 2 parties in Australia, believe it or not. And he said, you know, they were going to do that, but I really think that will have no teeth because of the government we have in office, and it wouldn't have mattered if we'd had the Labour Party as a government either. So it's terrible, but if he doesn't die in Belmarsh, he will die in the United States. It'll be dreadful. They'll put him in special administrative measures, and he'll never see any humans. They'll make sure that he, you know, it's a kind of a Nazi torture, really, of just depriving people of you know, sort of any sort of social engagement, and it's incredibly cruel, and that's what they will do to him. Special administrative measures, and they'll lock him and they'll torture him, and that's a form of torture anyway, of course. And they're supposedly going to lock him away for 175 years, which is a death sentence anyway. And in some ways, I wouldn't blame Julian Assange if he took matters into his own hands, and you know what I mean by that, because going over there is absolutely, it's going to be so much worse than Belmarsh Prison. And I can't allow myself to get as upset as I could allow myself to be, because I've been upset for so long now over this. If you've watched the number of videos that I've done over the last 3 years, I've been so upset about it, and it's like seeing people picking away at a corpse. You know, Julian Assange just pulling him back. They don't care about the person. They don't care about press freedom, and they're just sort of basically fighting over the remains of a corpse. That's what it feels like to me. And it's felt like that for a long time, particularly when they dragged him out of the Ecuadorian embassy, and he looked so in many ways destroyed from the kind of vibrant and strong man that he was before he went in there. And they've gradually destroyed the physical person, his body, and partially his mind, with this terrible torturous thing that they've done to him, this persecution of him, intentional persecution, to make an example of him so that no other person ever does this again. It's a warning to all journalists all over the world, anybody who wants to expose the U.S. imperialist war machine, the war crimes. That's what's going to happen to you. As Jonathan Cook said, if you look at my video from a couple of videos ago, Jonathan Cook said Julian Assange is the modern-day equivalent of a head on a pike outside the gates of a city.